Active learning has always been this really powerful tool in education. But now, with AI in the picture, it's gone from being a nice to have to something that's, well, it's absolutely essential. So let's really dig into why this is happening and what it all means for how we learn. And this really is the big question, isn't it? What actually happens to learning when an AI can just do the work? For forever, learning meant a student had to struggle and work to create something, an essay, a solution, whatever. But now, an AI can spit that out in seconds. The student doesn't have to do any of that heavy lifting. So what's left? And look, this isn't some tiny little change. We're talking about a technology that is completely changing the game. It's changing what students can create, sure, but way more importantly, it's changing how they even think about learning. The old playbook? It's pretty much out the window. All right, so AI changes everything. Let's talk about how we got here, because to really get where we're headed, you've got to see just how fast and how dramatically the world has shifted. Just think about this for a second. In the before times, right, pre-internet, your main sources were the teacher and the textbook. That was it. Then the internet comes along and boom, information is searchable. That was huge. But you still had to do the work, right? You had to search, you had to read, figure out what was good, what was junk. But now we're in the generative AI era, and answers aren't just searchable, they're generatable. That's not just the next step on the ladder, it's a whole different reality. It's a massive, massive leap. For the longest time, the product and the process were totally tied together. You couldn't get one without the other. If you wanted the product, the essay, the finished report, the right answer, you absolutely had to go through the process. The thinking, the analyzing, the evaluating, all that messy, important stuff. They were two sides of the same coin. And this quote, this just nails it. AI can produce the product of thinking without the student doing the thinking. That's the heart of the problem right there. The actual cognitive work, the struggle, the effort that actually builds real durable understanding in our brains, all of that can now just be skipped. Poof, gone. So that leaves us with this massive question. If the AI can just make the final product, how in the world do we make sure students are still doing the process? This is the challenge for educators right now. How do we design learning so that the thinking part isn't just a step, but it's the whole point, the main event? And the answer? Well, it's all about changing how we look at the problem. Which brings us to our solution, active learning. But we've got to be super clear here. The term active learning gets thrown around a lot, and frankly, there are a ton of myths about what it actually is. So, what is it, really? At its heart, active learning is a cognitive process. It's all about what's happening inside a student's head. It's about getting them to use those higher-order thinking skills to build an understanding that's deep, that's durable, and that they can actually use somewhere else. I just love this quote. It's thinking, not activity. It's so simple and cuts through all the confusion. It's not about moving around the room or doing some fun activity just for the sake of it. It's all about the quality of the mental work students are doing. So let's just be crystal clear on this. Active learning is not just about gimmicks, right? It's not about group work just for the heck of it. It's not about making lessons fun with no substance. And it's definitely not just about standing up or using mini whiteboards. Now, don't get me wrong, those things can be useful tools, but they aren't the thing itself. The goal is always, always the thinking. Okay, so if we agree that active learning is all about the thinking, how do we actually do it in a world with AI? Well, it comes down to 4 really practical, really powerful shifts in our approach. And here they are. First, we're going to start with thinking, not with tasks. Second, we'll use AI as a starting point. Third, we have to make thinking visible. And fourth, we're going to assess the process, not just the product. It's a pretty clear roadmap, so let's walk through each one. All right, shift 1. Start with thinking, not tasks. So the old way, right? We'd say, explain the causes of the French Revolution. A task an AI can nail in about 3 seconds. The new way is to flip that on its head. Before we even get to the content, we ask a thinking prompt like, hey, what actually makes an explanation good? What would you look for to judge if it's accurate? See what that does? It forces them to fire up their judgment and critical thinking skills from the very beginning. Shift 2 is brilliant, and it's all about using the AI output to think with. Instead of banning it, we embrace it. Give students the AI's answer, and then have them get to work on it.
Task them with evaluating its accuracy. Have them find the weak spots in its logic. Make them compare two different AI answers, or get them to add the evidence that the AI missed. This is a total game changer because it forces them to do exactly the kind of thinking AI can't.
Okay, on to shift 3, make thinking visible. This one's a biggie because the final product is now so easy to get. Our focus has to switch to the process. We've got to find ways to actually see the student's thinking journey, not just look at the final destination.
So, what does that actually look like in practice? Well, we start asking students to show us their thought process. Show me the steps in your reasoning. Tell me the criteria you used to make that judgment call. What other paths did you consider and why didn't you take them? What questions are you still wrestling with? When we do this, we take that invisible process of learning and we make it visible and, more importantly, we make it valuable. And all of this leads perfectly into our fourth and, you could argue, most important shift. Assess the process as much as the product. I mean, it just makes sense, right? If the process is where the real learning happens, then that's what our assessments need to focus on. We just can't keep grading only the final product anymore because we know where that can come from. The process, though, that's all them. And this quote really says it all. When we reward thinking, students practice thinking. It's as simple as that. Whatever we grade, whatever we reward, that's what students will focus on. So if we only reward the final essay, they'll find the quickest path there, and today, that's AI. But if we start rewarding the messy, critical process of thinking, well, then that's what they'll practice. It's a direct line.
Okay, let's just pull back for a second and look at the big picture here. Because this is about so much more than just figuring out how to grade the next assignment. This is about preparing people for a future where the very definition of a valuable skill is being completely rewritten under our feet. Because, let's be honest, in the age of AI, thinking is the essential human skill. When any fact is instantly available and answers can be generated on demand, just knowing stuff isn't the superpower it used to be. The real human advantage, what really matters now, is our ability to think critically, creatively, and deeply.
And these are the skills that truly matter now. The ability to question information, not just accept it. The skill to navigate real complexity. The power to generate an original insight, to exercise sound judgment, to think creatively. These are the things that active learning builds. And guess what? They're also the things that are incredibly hard to automate. This is where the value is now and where it's going to be. Which brings us to this final thought, and it's a powerful one. Pedagogy, the way we teach, has to evolve, but not by just throwing more tech at the problem. No, it evolves by strengthening what humans do best, thinking. It's about doubling down on our uniquely human skills. The real question for all of us is, how are we going to rise to that challenge?